All right, so this is presentation 3 for Unit 3. And this one we're going to look at a couple of different things. We're going to start real quick with government, which you should already know, kind of the basic idea of how the U.S. government's set up. And then we'll get into the economy of the United States and a little bit about demographics. So first off, we are representative democracy. So of course we elect representatives that represent us in Congress and are supposed to reflect our ideas and how we feel. And then we have a federal system or federalism, which is basically the idea that we have a strong federal or national government with weaker state governments. And so the national government is the strong core. If we had it the other way around, where we had strong state governments and a weak national government, then that would be a confederacy. Separation of powers just means that basically there is a division of power within our government. So we have our 3 branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative. So that way one branch doesn't have more power than the other, and so you have the checks and balances, making sure that basically we don't turn it into any kind of dictatorship or a collective dictatorship or anything like that. And I get into the economy and culture of the U.S. So we have the world's largest economy. 10% of all the world's exports come from the United States. You need to know why, and these 3 reasons are why. So you need to know these. First off, natural resources, and I mentioned that in the history presentation about the natural resources we have here that allowed us to be successful. And then the next big one is a skilled labor force. This means that our people are educated, and we have people that can be engineers and doctors and scientists and things like that. And so we have every group of people we need in order for our economy to run and function. So we got a large skilled labor force, and we have a stable political system. You can't have a good economy if you don't have a stable political system. No one's going to want to invest in your country or start a business in your country if they can't trust that the government is going to be stable and has power over the area. So you need all these 3 things in order to have a strong economy. And so when we look around the world at other countries as we go into other units, this is what we'll look back at is why is it that some countries in Africa can have amazing natural resources like gold, oil, and diamonds and still suck economically? And it comes down to a lack of a skilled labor force and a lack of a stable political system. If they had these 2 elements along with what they already have, they would be amazingly rich countries, but they don't. All right, so then our economy is driven by the service industry, which is the tertiary level that we talked about. So about 75% of us work in the service industry. That is huge. And so remember, I did mention before that one way to see how well a country is doing is look at what percentage of their workers work in the service industry. And by far majority of Americans in the service industry, therefore, make more money. So again, this is like information processing, finance, medicine, transportation, and education. And then as far as the phase we're in what's called a post-industrial economy. And this just simply means that we've already gone through our industrial revolution. So manufacturing isn't as big here as it used to be. So used to in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and into about the mid-70s, manufacturing was huge in the U.S. Places like Detroit, stuff like that were really good cities as far as the economy goes. But we started moving past that. Manufacturing started going to other countries around the world because it's cheaper to hire people in Mexico or China or Vietnam to work in factories and produce our goods than it is to hire an American because we were just becoming so rich. And so that's why those countries manufacture things for us now. And so we've gone past our industrial revolution. We've gone past working in factories. And so we're in a post-industrial economy. So your richest countries on earth are post-industrial economies. All right, this political cartoon. So this one's getting into immigration. You see the U.S. economy, and it's being propped up by all these people down here, and it says illegal immigration, and then the bottom line. So the idea here is that the illegal immigrants, which there's about 10 to 12 million or so, are really what prop up our economy. And so what this political cartoon is saying is without them, the rest of the economy would not function. That there's so many of them, and they've been employed in so many areas, and a lot of work that other Americans aren't really willing to do, like construction outside and stuff like that. And of course, you can pay them cheaper than you can pay an American, so it allows these companies to make more money. But basically, without them, our economy would fall apart. If we just deported all illegal immigrants, that would actually hurt our economy big time. And so one answer to illegal immigration is actually these maquiladoras. And you know what a maquiladora is. You see the word right there. Maquiladora. So these are plants where that are related to NAFTA, which we'll talk about NAFTA here in a minute, but basically it's a free trade agreement between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And these factories produce goods that are traded between all of these countries, but also some of these, you'll notice a lot of them are right here along the border. And a lot of these, what we do is we actually bring people from Mexico into the U.S. and have them work in the factories, produce things, and then take them back to Mexico at the end of the workday. So that way, again, we're able to help them be able to get better jobs, and it takes away that need to illegally immigrate. Now, these different maps and stuff I'm about to show you are older, but it still gets the point across. So one way also to look at the economy of the U.S. is breaking it down by, like, for example, where Walmart is. Generally speaking, Walmart is built in areas that are lower income for the most part. And so we can see how different parts of the country are doing economically based on this idea. So here, you see number of people per Walmart store, depending on the color there. So like Texas, it's 50 to 100,000 people per Walmart store. Now remember, this is 1999. A lot of Walmarts have been built since then. But again, it's the same idea. In California, you don't have as many Walmarts because you have wealthier people generally. And then your poorer areas have more Walmarts as compared to how many people they serve. So your richer areas of the country, higher income areas, generally have less Walmarts. And so that's, notice Alaska only has 6. All right, so this one looks at fast food sales, and it's a lot easier to feed your family if you're lower income at a fast food restaurant like Dairy Queen or McDonald's or something like that. And so where you have higher sales at fast food restaurants. So here it's what this is showing is fast food as a percentage of total restaurant sales. So like in Mississippi, 57% of all restaurant sales are fast food. Alabama, 55%. Georgia, 46%. Texas at 43%. And notice it gets lower as you go to the Northeast or again on the West Coast. And this can be for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, economically, they tend to be richer, better off. Another reason, too, is you generally have more health-conscious people on the West Coast and in the Northeast. And the other reason, too, especially in the Northeast, like if you're in New York City or Boston or something like that, there's so much good food there, and there's so many good local restaurants. It's kind of like, why would you go to a fast food restaurant? But economically is the number one reason why. So again, you can kind of see how the U.S. is doing by region by looking at things like that. All right, and then the U.S. is the number one food exporter in the world. You need to know why. So I mentioned the wheat basket presentation 1. So of course we have fertile soils, a favorable climate, and then early mechanization. And what that means, that last one, is that we brought in like tractors and things like that early on as compared to other countries. So basically, once we got rid of slavery and white people had to go out there and actually work, they realized that if they can mechanize this, it would be a lot better. And so they started creating things like tractors and stuff like that in order to help with farming. And now, of course, we mass produce our crops. All right, and then getting into demographics a little bit. So we are a multinational country. We have immigrants from literally everywhere on Earth. And so as far as the ancestry trace of Americans, today about 70% of Americans trace themselves back to Europe, 13% are Latin American, 12% African American, 4% Asians, and 1% Native American is roughly the breakdown of the country. And then NAFTA, as I said, I'll get back to this. So NAFTA was, it stands for North American Free Trade Agreement. And it was a big agreement back in 1993 to create this trading bloc with U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And the idea basically is that this create free trade, so there's no tariffs or barriers to trade. And the idea that this would help Mexico and us, because now businesses in the United States could set up factories in Mexico, have them produce the goods, and then bring it back to the U.S. and sell it here, or sell it in Mexico, or sell it in Canada. So the idea is that it would also help them make more money. All right, and then looking at subregions of the U.S., so this is kind of breaking down the different regions and where people live. So here you can see, as far as area, land, the western half of the U.S. makes up 50%. The Northeast is 5% of the land. The Midwest is 20% of the land. Down here in the South, we're 25% of the country. But in population, 20% of the country lives in the West. Northeast has 20% of the population, even though it's only 5% of the land. The Midwest is 25% of the population. Down in the South, we have 35% of the population. So obviously, it's not evenly divided whatsoever. Then you get your linguistic map, and so these are different general dialects. Obviously, it breaks down even more so than this because someone that lives in Georgia speaks differently than somebody that lives in Texas. But generally speaking, this is how our dialects and accents are broken down. Notice the West is a very large one, and most of this is because this is a new area. Think about it this way: people from all these different areas have moved west, and so they haven't developed their own unique accent or dialect or anything like that yet, but it is developing. All right, and then you can also look at regions as far as culturally speaking by sports as well. So, like in Texas, this is looking at high school sports, for example. So, in Texas, it's like the holy trinity of sports is the big deal. So, basically, football, baseball, and basketball are your main ones. And then another way you can look at it with sports and stuff like that is like bowling, for example, is huge up there in the north because it's freakishly cold. And again, football, of course, huge in the South. That's where most of your NFL players come from, is throughout this region and then California. So, it's just kind of a cool way to look at the breakdown of the U.S. And so that's it on economics and demographics.